Okay, so in this video, I want to talk about two features that are going to be a part of 0.4.13. This has got to do with languages, right? So the first of the changes is this. So in settings, we now have the application tab with multiple pages. So we have a fonts page. In this page, we will be able to associate fonts for specific languages within Scribe. So previously, we would bundle a few default fonts, and those were the only fonts that the users could use. With 0.4.13, they can now assign new fonts for specific languages. So if I go to English, these are the fonts that are there available to us available to me in my Mac computer, which support the English letters and are of fixed width, right? So only those fonts are shown in this combo box, because there's really no point in showing Times New Roman, Verdana, and Chalkbuster and everything else. Nobody's going to use that for writing screenplays anyway, right? So we only show fixed width fonts. So it used to always be Courier Prime before, but now we can change it to some other font. So I've just made it Monaco for the sake of this demo. Like that, for Kannada fonts, we have a bunch of fonts. It used to be Balutama by default, but now I've selected Tiru Kannada. And you can notice that Balutama is, it's going to appear like that, but this is Tiru Kannada, right? It's got a very cursive feel to the Kannada font, so I'm just going to keep that so that visually we can notice a difference. But the same way, I've also changed the Hindi font. It's now going to be Tiru Hindi. So now I will start a new scene, and you'll notice that the heading now uses the new font. It's not the Courier font anymore, it's the new font, which is Monaco. This is now using the new font, right? And you can see that it visually looks very different. I can now go to Hindi, and when I type something here, it's going to make use of the new Hindi font that I've just set in the settings. And similarly for Kannada, it's going to make use of the new Kannada font that I've set in settings. Scribe also makes use of these new fonts within preview, right? You'll notice that the title page has the new font, and the content page has the new font as well. It also makes use of the new font when we generate PDF as well. So the way to check that is I can open this in Adobe Reader. What then happens is, if I zoom in, you'll notice that it is making use of the new fonts that we have set in Scribe. But I think a more informed way to test that, to check that, is to go to document properties and then fonts. And here you'll notice that it is embedding into the PDF Tiro Hindi, Tiro Kannada, and Monaco fonts, right? So this way, whatever fonts the user uses on his computer while typing his screenplay using Scribe, those are the fonts that will get embedded in the PDF as well. So let's go back to Scribe now. And the other feature that I wanted to show was, it's got something to do with typing experience. A lot of people, a lot of our early users simply don't like the transliteration that comes bundled with the app, right? So what we want to do is make it easier for them. One thing that I think all of us have discussed before is, can we use Google Translate, right? There's one big downside to that, and that is, one is we need an active internet connection, and two is every time the user types something, it has to go all the way to the Google servers and then come back, and then we have to show the options, transliteration options, and then allow the user to pick from one of them, right? So that's kind of a lot of roundabout, and it allows Google to kind of monitor all the words that come from Scribe, because they're going to be tagging their API, all our API calls as Scribe API calls. So I think we have a much better way of solving this problem, right? And the way we can do that is, it turns out that operating systems provide this thing called as input sources. So Windows has keyboards, layouts, that you can select from the control panel. In Mac, there is something called as input sources. So I can add an input source for, let's say, Hindi, which provides me a transliteration keyboard for Hindi. And I can also add, let's say, something like Kannada, right, which provides me a Kannada transliteration support. There's no Kannada transliteration available in Mac. It's only Kannada keyboard. I don't know why they don't have transliteration. Maybe there is a third-party app that provides a Kannada transliteration keyboard for Mac as well. So anyway, so I'm going to add these two keyboards. So now I have three keyboards available, enabled in my Mac setup. And I will check this box which says show input menu in the menu bar. So that way we're going to have this button on the menu bar that shows us all of these keyboards. So it is today possible for us, so while typing, to go into this menu and then say select Hindi, right? And now when I come back, although Scribe says English, the Mac is going to override that to Hindi. So now when I type in Hindi, you'll notice that it makes use of Mac's Hindi transliteration for typing into Scribe. So this was always possible, right? But this is not cool. I mean, this just doesn't blend well with a lot of things that we already do in Scribe. We can, for example, in Scribe say all dialogues are in Hindi. So in which case, the moment we switch to dialogue, it has to go to a Hindi transliteration. So what if we are able to tie up only the Hindi transliteration engine with the input method provided by the operating system. So now in settings, we have this new page called as transliteration. And you'll notice that for each language, it provides me a combo box. And by default, what's selected in the combo box is default inbuilt Scribe translator. And you'll notice that Bengali, Gujarati, and Malayalam and the other languages, it's disabled. It's only these languages that are enabled. So if I go to Kannada now, it shows that this is a Kannada keyboard that's available. So I can select Kannada because that's available in the list of options here. And I also have Hindi, which is also available in the list of options here. So I can say that whenever I'm typing in Hindi within Scribe, automatically switch to the Hindi input method in Mac and automatically switch to Kannada input method in Mac when I'm typing in Kannada. But for Bengali, Gujarati, Tamil, Telugu, etc., make use of the inbuilt Scribe transliterator. So now what happens is when I go here and I switch the language to Hindi, notice that the moment I check on this on the right top menu here, it will also show Hindi. So the moment I switch here to Hindi, it becomes Hindi on the input method. It will select the keyboard as Hindi in Mac as well. So now right? So I'm able to type using the inbuilt transliterator keyboard provided by Mac. And if I switch to Kannada, the moment I switch to Kannada here, you'll notice that the keyboard is now Kannada. This is not a transliterator keyboard, like I said before. This is going to assume that I have a physical Kannada keyboard. So it's going to respond to the physical keys of a Kannada keyboard, which I don't obviously have, right? So we can do because Scribe now keeps the input method in sync with the languages that I'm setting in Scribe. We can do some very interesting things. Just before I switch to that, so suppose I move to, let's say, Sanskrit, right? Now for Sanskrit, I have not configured any keyboard for Sanskrit. So it switches back to the standard English keyboard in my operating system, but it's going to make use of the inbuilt transliterator, which, as you can see, sucks already, right? So what I'm going to do now is take this off, and I'm going to go to settings, and we have formatting rules, and I'm going to say that all my dialogues are going to be in Hindi, right? I've configured this. So what I can now do is, let's say, go back to English and say this is some action text, okay? Arjun, the moment now I switch to dialogue, Scribe switches to Hindi inside the app, and therefore also cascades it to the input method in my Mac OS as well. Right? right? So I'm able to simply type in Hindi by making use of the inbuilt keyboard method, input source method in the Mac operating system. So now when I go back to action, it switches back to the standard language, right? So this is a cool thing about Scride. So I want to show you one more thing. So now I quit Scride, and let's say for whatever reason, I go to my keyboard preferences, and let's say I remove these keyboards, right? Which something that users may not do if they are very serious about writing in their native language. So now when I launch Scride, I go back to transliteration settings. You'll notice that it's called gotten reset to defaults. So it's no longer going to make use of the transliterators from the operating system, but it will make use of the inbuilt Scride transliterator. So I can say it's now making use of the inbuilt transliterator in Scride. So these are the two changes that I'm hoping will improve the reputation of Scride as an Indic language writer. So we have a similar method in Windows as well. I'm going to record another video to show you how this works on Windows. So I'll push a build of this on our OneDrive server, and I'm going to send across links. Maybe you can take this for a ride and let me know what you think. Yeah.